In consideration of the COVID-19 social distancing recommendations, this meeting is being held virtually via Zoom. The public may participate with comments by using the chat feature. Please note that any statements you make in the chat feature will be visible to the whole group. Information relating to this meeting is available on the missionkansas.org calendar website, and you can contact the city if you have any questions, and this meeting will be recorded and posted as well. Due to the limitations of Zoom, I can only see 9 of you on my iPad screen at a time, so we'll have to do a little bit of self-regulating, or someone can help me call on people who have questions. First up tonight, we have public comments. This would be the time if there are any members of the public who have comments on items that are not on our agenda tonight. And again, you can submit anything through the chat feature. All right, seeing none at this time, we'll move on to public presentations, which are informational only. We do have one presentation tonight relating to the proposed redevelopment of the former Mission Bowl property at 5399 Martway. Brian Scott.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We have with us tonight Banks Floodman, who is a representative of the Sunflower Group, as well as Connor Trainer, who's an architect working with the group on this proposed project, and Cord Maxwell, who's their attorney. Mr. Floodman has been in discussions with Steve Choykett, who's the owner of 5399 Martway, the property that is the former Mission Bowl property. And he's in discussions with him about the possibility of buying that property and redeveloping it for a multifamily use. Mr. Floodman approached Ms. Smith and I about 3 or 4 months ago during the winter to start some initial discussions. We've reviewed his proposal. We had a meeting with you and the mayor to kind of discuss this. And we thought before we get too far along, we should really present the idea or the concept to you all. So that's why we invited Mr. Floodman to come to this evening's meeting, just to kind of present the overall concept to you and get your initial feedback on that. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Floodman and let him kind of take it from there. Thanks. Okay, do you have that presentation or?
I do have it. For some reason, I've been on Zoom meetings all day. It's not connecting me, but I've got everything pulled up, and so we should be set, and I can kind of walk through everything here. Can you guys see everything okay as far as the presentation's concerned, though?
There it is.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, first and foremost, thank you, council members, city, Connor, Cord, for taking the time. I know everybody's evenings are busy, but we're excited about this. We're going to call it a redevelopment opportunity. We've been in discussions with Steve Choykett now for a couple years, you know, just on when the right time might be for him to sell the property. And so he was finally interested a few months ago, and we started a discussion and now have it under contract. And what we're proposing is a multi-family development that we'll kind of walk through the steps here. You know, I want this to be an absolute two-way, questions, any questions or comments that come up, feel free to kind of ask throughout the presentation, but we're here to, I don't ever think over-communicating is a bad thing, especially on the early stages like this. And so we just want to make sure that we are addressing the topics, any concerns in the development as a whole with all constituents within the city of Mission. So we'll kind of just first and foremost, maybe I'll just give a brief introduction of the kind of our development team and a little bit of background on Sunflower specifically. Then I'll give a little background on First Management and First Construction, and then I'll let Connor Trainer on the phone give a little bit of background on Trainer HL. Sunflower Development Group, we're a local developer. We are a part of the development entity. We're not representing anybody. We will be a part of this project from day one. That was a question I had earlier from somebody, and I just want to make sure that is presented in the appropriate way. But we've been around for about 15 years now. We were started by a gentleman in our company Our principal's name is Jason Swords. We've done a little over $200 million of development over the course of that time. Started out very small. We've done a lot of tax credit work, so a lot of historic redevelopments in the downtown, kind of CBD. And we've kind of cut our teeth doing smaller developments, and then have got into a little more multifamily, over the last probably decade, I would say. And then really it started to expand over the course of the last 5 or 6 years into hospitality, ground up multifamily, and exciting opportunities like the one we're going to present to you tonight. And so that's a little bit of our background. There's a shop there. Our offices consist of 5 people. Just so you understand kind of how we operate as a company, like we all try to do, we try to find people and partners that complement our weaknesses. And so what we do is we'll put a development together. Usually the first thing we'll go find is a GC and an architect that want to be a part of the development as well. In a lot of cases, not all cases, but a lot of cases. We think that does a few different things, but we think that when the partners and your major, scopes of work, which are going to be your architect and your contractor, when they've got, an ownership or partnership in the deal, we think that significantly increases the probability of success in the way that the product is delivered, both on time and in the first class manner that we think this development will be. And so in this case, our partners are First Management and First Construction, which is based out of Lawrence, Kansas. This is also the same development team as our Uptown Lofts project, which is happening just off 36th and Broadway. That's a 213 unit, 29,000 square foot retail project that we are currently under construction on. Our anticipated delivery on that project is going to be June of 2021. So we're excited about that. But we have the same group, First Management, First Construction, and then Trainer HL, that are the partners on that project as well. But jumping back to First Management, First Construction, they've built over 6,000 multifamily units kind of throughout the country, manage over 1,000 units. And so they are going to be our partner. A gentleman named Robert Green and Doug Compton are going to be our partner on this project as well. And then we have Mike Trainer that founded Trainer Architects. Now it's known as Trainer HL, which is based out of Lawrence, Kansas. And so Connor, maybe you can give a little bit of background on Trainer HL and you guys' story.
Sure. Thanks, Banks. So yeah, Trainer HL was founded in Lawrence almost 40 years ago now. And we do have a Kansas City office. We have 9 offices across the country, and each is sort of focuses on its own specialized area of design. Most of the work done out of the Kansas City office is in our justice studio, doing a lot of courthouses, police stations, civic buildings, things like that. There's some historic preservation, but mostly justice. Most of the development and housing and mixed use is done out of our Lawrence office, which is our original office and where this project will be done out of. Other specialties across the country, we have, healthcare, we have an education studio, advanced industries, a couple different university building types, student housing, life sciences, various building types. But again, and some of those also are carried out of the Lawrence office, and the lion's share of the development work as well. So that's where that's how we fit in.
Thanks, Connor. Any questions up to this point? Anybody? Okay. Kind of our anticipated timeline. I just want to talk a little bit about that. Up to this point, we've had I've really reached out just to one neighbor in the area and wanted to get their feedback on the potential development. Our plan is to, after this meeting, I think that is going to be one of our biggest steps and priorities, is to make sure that we're having an open dialogue. And so on June 15th is at least what we're shooting for at this time, Brian, right? I think that's still the case.
Correct.
We're gonna shoot for a community meeting to invite neighbors so we can discuss the project and what we're doing up to this point. That would then be triggered by an additional city council meeting with the objective of working through the timeline to potentially get to planning commission meeting on July 27th. Up to this, again, the meeting that we had prior to this was really just the development plan review meeting. And then Brian briefly mentioned the meeting that myself, Connor, Brian, and Laura had a few months back until we hit, obviously, unfortunate circumstances with COVID and everything we're going through now. But that's the tentative timeline up to this point. I think if you guys are okay with it, maybe we can now kind of jump into the presentation. I touched a little bit on, Sunflower, our team. You can see on slide 3 there. That is the Sunflower team, and then we've just got some reference to some of the projects that we've completed and that are in progress. And then we
the council does have this. They have individual copies of this as well. So if I drive too fast or too slow, just let me know.
Okay, no problem at all. But so you can see some of the projects that we've done that that we feel have been very successful, and hopefully the communities that we're building those in, that the feedback has been very positive, and again, we hope to do the same thing with this project. So maybe now, Connor, I think we'd be on slide 8. You can kind of start talking through maybe some of the projects that you've done from a multifamily perspective, and then that'll start to transition into the site and development itself, and then we can finish maybe with Corb talking a little bit, and then some questions and answers, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, we can jump in here.
Okay.
On slide 8 here, we're back at the Uptown Lofts project at 36 and Broadway, which Banks mentioned. This is, again, first construction, Sunflower Development, and Trainer HL. I believe after this one is a few other projects we've done in Lawrence with first construction. Trainer HL and first construction have worked together probably going on 20 years now on various projects kind of across the Kansas and Missouri area. We've started working with Sunflower Development in the last couple of years, which has been a great relationship, and we've moved out to Colorado and some other places. So these are just some examples of our previous projects. So 10, we're really getting into the into the preliminary design presentation. So we all know the site very well, but it's we just like to look at it in relation to its context. We go to 11. And so here we're zoomed in on the site. The very southern end of sort of the bowl, you can see there's a Johnson County wastewater facility at the south end of the site with the retail property shopping center that Steve Chokett continues to own, that the Peanut is in to the northern part of the site across the street.
Mission Mart.
And what we can also see on this page is there's a small triangular piece of ground to the west side of the west portion of the site that's going to be purchased that Steve is going to retain, and that will be overflow parking for the Peanut and for the retailers across the street.
And I think one thing to note right there, Connor, is the reason we didn't extend that building further west to go over that ingress-egress on the west portion of that site is because Steve did not want vehicles that are going to be utilizing that parking to go under our building. We also had some concerns over that, but we feel that Connor did a a very good job of putting together a structure that hopefully you guys will like. So that's the reason behind that.
Yeah, some of our preliminary site plans we pulled directly into a parking garage into the building and had cross access to the portion of the site that will be retained. But as Banks said, we've moved away from that. Also,
Connor, sorry to interrupt again. And also just one thing to note, maybe Connor, you were going to mention this, but on the east side of the site, I'm sure everybody's very familiar with the cell tower that's there. There is a access agreement with that cell tower that is not a part of our site that requires us to continue to give access for maintenance, et cetera, for that cell tower. And so that is, again, another reason why we had to leave that area open to allow that access for that cell tower.
That's right. So you'll also see on these two black lines running north and south on the site, those are a couple of site sections that we're going to see coming up in the presentation. So this is the first level of the site without the roof. So you can see the dotted lines sort of where the building ran on the previous slide. So there's about 78 spaces on the site, which are actually in secured covered parking, with the rest of them being surface spaces. To the southern end, there's also 33 spaces that will be sort of, we're debating whether it's carports or garages or some sort of covered parking to the rear of the site, which also screens the site from that Johnson County wastewater facility. Here are those two site sections. So the one, this is just to get an idea of the scale of this building in relation to Mission Mart Shopping Center to the north and the neighborhood to the south, as well as some of the adjacent buildings. We have the cell tower visible in the background, as well as the office and bank tower right there that Laura's hovering over. So the top section is the portion of the building that gets closest to the adjoining neighborhood. And as you can see, the top rail of the terrace shown on the roof is slightly below the top of that house that the section is cut through. And there's approximately 265 feet of separation that's border that also has a lot of old growth, large trees, as well as that ravine that we can see in the section. So that's the one portion of the L. The bottom section is what the majority of the site is, which fronts Martway to the left between Mission Mart and our building. And then the rest of the parking is to the right of our building. You see those covered garages and then the wastewater facility in the neighborhood on the right edge of the page.
And Connor, our goal on this is really to build as close to Martway as possible, to really engage that street, create what we believe is a lot of walkability, right, just to the north of our development, and tie into a fantastic trail system and other developments that are going on within the area.
Definitely. And we're going to show an image later that we hope gets to that sort of densification of the streetscape on Martway. So here, just some of the design themes that we picked up from the neighborhood that are very strong. We feel quite unique to Mission and to this Martway and Johnson Drive corridor. Most of the images are directly from here. Some are from the plaza. We looked at a lot of Mission design guidelines in preparing this presentation, and there was a lot of images drawn not only from Mission but also from the plaza and the design guidelines, so we included some in this presentation. The first strong design theme that we're seeing is these very strong horizontal datums that are often red, and they're really all over this neighborhood. Is number one. Next, we're seeing this sort of organization of the facade around this frame and infill. So there's a very regular order of the facade in all of these that the tenants behind this facade sort of slip in and out of this frame. We see it directly across the street here, a couple other buildings in Mission, and most notably the buildings on the plaza. Here, this mosaic theme, this sort of mosaic seems to work its way into all kinds of facades in a number of ways, whether it's three-dimensional, offsets in the brickwork, different patterning, coloring of the bricks. We see it, on this page, we have the Skelly building on the plaza, and we have RJ's on Johnson Drive. Different buildings in terms of program, economics, wildly different. But that same facade theme, that design theme, finds its way into both of them, just like it does in a number of buildings throughout Michigan. We have an expressed or celebrated corner. It obviously occurs more often on the plaza division, the images on the right, but here we are in Mission on the left with that same theme. It's prevalent in many spaces. This is the one we chose for the presentation. Patterned parking screens. This is something that, because we do have parking at street level here, we thought was important to capture that sort of design theme that is very prevalent on the plaza. We're going to try and work into this project as well. And here's how we sort of synthesized all of those themes into a concept for a facade. So we have those strong horizontal data, the regular organization that functions slip in and out of, the mosaic quality of the facade, pattern parking screening at ground level, and then some sort of expressed or celebrated corner that really signifies entry to the project. This is a conceptual design, and we have a lot of work to do left to do on it. The corner especially, but this is our first pass at it. And the next slide really shows kind of the streetscape that we're after here.
Thanks, Connor. Well, that really concludes the presentation portion. Does anybody have any questions?
This is Ken Davis. You had mentioned that you had met with one resident. Can you tell us a little bit about that meeting? So,
gentleman, Ben Josie and I had a conversation probably about 3 months ago. And I just wanted to reach out and get his feedback on the project, and that conversation was positive. He looked forward to hearing more on the project, but overall it was a very productive and positive conversation. I actually talked to Ben again today, just to touch base with him and let him know that this meeting would be going on tonight, and then that we were in the process of planning another community meeting that I would enjoy if he could attend and help at least spread the word with some of his constituents. I understand there will be a mailing and all the necessary steps will need to take place, but up to this point, those are the only two discussions I've had with him.
And Ben has indicated in the chat, just for everyone's awareness, that he is also on this call tonight.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Ollie, I have a question. I do.
Yep.
I do. You indicated that you kind of were looking at a concept that had features that were conducive to those in Mission. To me, and maybe this is just a personal opinion, this looks nothing like Mission. It reminds me, and I'm not trying to be rude, I'm trying to be respectful, but it looks like a 1960s hotel to me. That's, I can see individual traits of Mission, the tile, things like that, but the overall structure looks nothing like a building in Mission, especially the newer ones that are being developed right now.
Okay, we appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, that's the feedback we want to discuss and talk through on this call. Absolutely. So thank you for that feedback.
Hillary,
Right.
Sally, I have a question, if that's okay.
Yep.
Hey, guys, thanks for being interested in coming into mission, first of all, and thank you for your presentation. I had a quick question on page 11 of your presentation. Maybe I just have a hard time reading these maps, but is the pool going to be right next to that wastewater?
It'll be elevated. It'll be on the 4th floor.
Okay. Okay. That's what I was missing. That's good to know. Would it be right next to it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Any other questions?
So, Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
can you go back to the map? We kind of flipped out of that pretty quickly.
Sorry.
Really, our next step, and Banks kind of touched upon this, we would like to have the developer reach out, and well, we'll assist in helping the developer to reach out. We'd like to have a neighborhood meeting with these folks that live behind the Mission Bowl site, kind of the south side of the Rock Creek Channel. And again, kind of present this project to them, get their initial feedback. And then if after that meeting, Mr. Banks and his group is still interested in proceeding, then we begin going through the preliminary development plan process with them. Staff did have an initial meeting with them a couple of weeks ago and kind of discussed some very general concepts about the project at sort of 45,000 level. But this would really be the time to, at this neighborhood meeting, to get into the nuts and bolts of the project, the real details of it, and begin working on their application for a preliminary development plan that would be eventually submitted to the the Planning Commission, excuse me, for their consideration, July or an August meeting. So those are kind of our next steps for this process. We're looking maybe to have that neighborhood meeting on the 15th of June. That's kind of our tentative date. If we can kind of finalize that date this week, we'll be sending out mailings to all the residents back there. And we'll be doing a virtual meeting, much like we're doing tonight, being conscious of the COVID requirements and social distancing. And then kind of go from there.
I do want to jump in.
And then go ahead.
Before we get there, because I think one thing, Connor did a nice job, and you all did a nice job about talking about some of the ingress and egress challenges and the cell tower. But if you could, would you just touch on the wastewater main that connects out, because we didn't talk about that as we looked at the site contextually.
Absolutely. And so that's another reason why we've left that area open on the east side of the lot, not just for the cell tower access agreement, but there is a major, I can't remember how big the line is, Connor, you know off the top of your head, but there's a sanitary sewer line that we're going to have to move on this side as well. We've gotten a couple bids on what that would cost, but we're going to have to move that entire line over to the east. I'm pretty sure the Mission Gateway project was able to build over that, but I think there was an exception for that. We did talk to the necessary parties, and that would not be the case on our site. We can, even if we had 15-foot clearance, we would need to move that sanitary sewer line. So that will have to move. I do think it's important to note, although we're early in the process, but that there will be an incentive request on this development. We anticipate the development being about a $30 million development, maybe a little bit above that, and the overall incentive request being anywhere from 13 to 16% of that, and that would be in the form of sales tax exemption on construction materials, and then TIF, which we would understand the eligible cost most importantly, but we would utilize that to demo the existing structure, relocate those utilities, and then also we understand based on some conversations that there's a retaining wall that needs to take place along that creek because there is a lot of erosion that's happening along the neighbors to the south, that we would also repair. I believe that the city estimates up to this point are roughly $200,000 or something of that nature, but that would be a cost that we would include within our development as well.
Thank you. Laura, Brian, relatedly, could you speak to just briefly what the zoning is for this property, both in terms of use and height and density?
Yeah, so the current zoning for this site is MS2, which is pretty much all of the zoning along either side of Johnson Drive, a block south or a block north. So that would be similar to, it's exactly the same zoning as the Martway apartment buildings that the city council considered a few years ago. The height stipulations for MS2 are 3 stories or 45 feet. So if they're inclined to go 5 stories with this building, they would need to seek a deviation.
Yeah, we'd be 57 feet, right, Connor?
That's correct.
Yeah, so they'll need to seek a height deviation on the zoning. And I think the density is a little higher than what's allowed for MS2, so they'd be seeking a deviation on the density as well for the site. And then MS2 kind of favors some type of activity on the ground floor retail or office as part of a residential project. Obviously, they have parking in that area. So we would have to have some discussions with them about a deviation or doing something maybe on that ground floor that kind of activates that area a little bit more for the pedestrians that are walking by.
And Brian, that's what we would typically refer to as a mixed-use development. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is Banks. Just I think one thing is important to note here is I mean our goal with this development is to complement the existing area. We understand that there's going to be a lot of retail office coming online. There's a lot of retail and office immediately across the street from us. I think that it is worth mentioning also that there's in our contract with the seller, there is a deed restriction regarding the use of any office or retail space. Steve does not want to see that use directly that would compete with the property that he owns. And we agree with that. We believe that multifamily is the highest and best use for this site, given the land uses immediately around it. So I think I just wanted to make sure that was at least brought up on this call. Okay.
I'm going to reiterate one comment from Ben in the chat and then go to Hillary and Trent, who have let me know they have questions. So Ben wanted to reiterate that he plans to talk more at the community meeting, but he wants to vocalize his support at this time for increased height and density, but also echo the desire for mixed use, ideally. Hillary, did you also have a question or comment?
Yeah, I had 2 questions. First one was how many apartments are planned to be in this? And the second question is, at the June 15th meeting, do you plan to have a similar presentation, or do you plan to have it a little bit more detailed with some of that stuff that you've just touched on in terms of budget, your incentive requests, and how many apartments you're looking at, density, things like that? And then I'm not sure if this is all of that is something that we're looking to have wrapped up, in a later conversation, or if we're, as a city, Brian, is that something that, Planning Commission will then dig more into before it then comes to us? Yeah. So mine's partly process from the city that I'm looking to understand, but then also just a little bit more specifics from the development group.
So to answer your question, Hillary, there'll be a lot more meetings. This is just touchstones that will occur over the next several months regarding this project. The next step will be a preliminary development plan application that will be considered by the Planning Commission. That would go to you all for consideration upon the approval of the Planning Commission. So that would be an opportunity to ask lots of very detailed questions about the project, the preliminary development plans. We really get into the nuts and bolts about zoning, the deviations that may be requested, parking, landscaping, ingress, traffic, stormwater, impact on surrounding infrastructure, really all the various aspects of the site and the impact that it's going to have on the surrounding area of the neighborhood. And then if that's approved by you all, then the developer will come back to the Planning Commission for a final development plan review. And that's where we kind of get more into the aesthetics a little bit. Although the preliminary development plan, they should have a pretty well laid out project plan and elevations and materials selected by that point. But the final development plans, we kind of get down to where the bush is going to go on the site, those kind of little details. That would not go to you all. That's just kind of a final stop with the Planning Commission. Of course, any request for use of tax increment financing is something that's considered by you all. You're the final decision makers on that request, and there'll be further discussion about that among staff as well as you all.
And Brian or the development group, could you address the number of apartments, which I think was the other component of Hillary's question?
Yeah, so we're going to have 166 is the number of units that we're shooting for. And then you also, your second question was regarding the neighborhood meeting as well. And so and then specifically, is there going to be more detail? There may be a little more detail, but I think first and foremost, what we want to do is get out front and have the discussion regarding the uses and what we're planning on this site, and have just an open and honest dialogue. We will discuss the incentives and just in being very broad, just because we don't know what those details are yet. We understand there needs to be a but-for analysis that we're going to have to work through, but I don't think that would be fair to the city or the neighbors to go down the path of discussing incentives in detail when we just don't have those numbers yet. But I think it's important that we do discuss, kind of like we just did, what the incentive request could look like at this point in time, based on our initial due diligence, over the last few months, and our experience in the multifamily world.
Sure. Okay. I'll go to, I think Trent had a question next.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Development Group. Had a question for you all. In seeing these renderings, it looks like this is a luxury type of residence. Has there been any thought about any kind of affordable housing components to this, or sort of who our target audience is when we're kind of thinking about getting this off the ground?
Yeah, Trent, we did talk to the city about that a little bit, and this is going to be a Class A product. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be highly amenitized. I know there's locale that's relatively close to this site as well. But what I think is important to note is we do anticipate, and I don't want to say there are going to be any sort of affordable units, but units that are under $1,000 in this complex, because we understand, especially given the current situation, that not everybody can spend $1,500 or $1,800 or $2,500 a month, and so we do plan to have a good portion of the units that would be under $1,000. That would most likely be the studios, but I think it's important that option is available.
Great. Debbie, did you have a question as well?
I did. Is there a way, Laura, that staff could put together for the council a comprehensive plan of all the apartments we currently have in the city of Mission, size of apartments, monthly costs, before, I know it's asking a lot, but before the neighborhood meeting, is there a possibility to get a listing of all those like a map of where, and maybe a map of where they are, and because we've got the gateway right down the street, the new development on Johnson Drive, I would help me a lot if I saw a whole comprehensive listing of all the apartments we currently have in 2.5 square miles.
I think we can
do that.
Yeah, we can do that. I think the challenging thing would be how accurately we can reflect the rents. But we can certainly, I mean, the complexes and the number of units that each would have in that location on a map is something that we can put together.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, just one quick thing. Have we had any, or not we, but have you guys at Sunflower had any conversations with police or fire about access and safety with the building if they need to get in and out of there?
We have not up to this point yet, but we will. That will definitely be a conversation that we have early on in the process.
Yeah, just kind of looking at. I mean, I'm sure it's things that can be worked out pretty easily, but just making sure that fire department, police, if they need to get in and out of there, can have the right access is going to be pretty important.
Yeah,
that I know on the previous Martway project we talked about. So.
Okay, absolutely.
It's all part of that preliminary development plan process that we'll go through.
Right.
All right. Next. Next one.
The one other.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Has there been any kind of traffic study done or traffic analysis done, or will that also just be more coming with the preliminary plan?
Exactly. That'll be part of the preliminary development plan.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then,
one of the things I would like to stress is that having the developer have the neighborhood meeting was moved way up in this process. So, because we wanted to make sure we knew how the neighbors felt about this, and the developers knew what they were facing before they, because I think this is a little different. You guys are asking a bunch of detailed questions that we're not at that step yet, because we wanted the neighbors to weigh in before those things were developed. So this is just a little bit different than we've done a couple of the past projects, but that's why it seems a little like all the information isn't at your fingertips yet, because we have moved up that neighborhood meeting to be right after that they talk to you guys. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
and I do think Ken and then Hillary has an additional question, so we'll go in that order. Ken?
Yes, my question had to do with the that triangle to the west that's going to be retained. You're going to retain ownership. Is that for future building?
No, that's the owner, the current owner of the site, Steve Chokit, wants to keep that for parking for the Peanut.
Okay, so that's simply going to remain as parking.
Correct. That will stay as parking for the Martway shops across the street.
Thank you.
Yep, not a problem.
And then Hillary, did you have another question, or are you good for now?
I did, but the mayor helped give some insight as to the timeline here, and so I'm good. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, seeing and hearing none, thank you so much for your presentation. I look forward to the community meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you all. We really appreciate it and look forward to working with you guys on this.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda, we have action items, and we have 4 action items for tonight. The first is acceptance of the May 6, 2020 Community Development Committee minutes. Audrey.
Hi, thank you. I submitted the minutes of the May 6, 2020 Community Development Committee for your review and consideration.
I would ask that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Next up, we have the 2021 to 2025 CARS project. Celia.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. As you know, Johnson County administers the CARS program, which funds city road projects on CARS eligible routes using gas tax funds, as well as some Johnson County general revenue funds. So in order to participate this program, cities are required to submit a 5-year street improvement plan every year. And I know that most of you are familiar with this and you already know the process, but I thought I'd lay it out just in case for anyone that's participating in this meeting. The projects are selected. The ones that are selected are eligible for funding up to 50% of the project costs for construction and construction inspection. So as a reminder, the county asks for a 5-year plan, and that's mainly for planning purposes, but we're really committing to the 2021 project when we submit a 2021 to 2025. So we can change projects, move things around, you know, every year if we need to. Staff is recommending the projects listed in the table that was in your packet. And Laura, could you please pull up that table and I'll quickly go over it and then be open for any kind of questions you have.
Emily, can you get it?
I have it too.
Okay. Sorry. My computer's acting up.
Please confirm that this is what you mean. Is that the table?
The table on the next page.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, right.
There it is.
Okay, I'll try to make it bigger. Is that good?
So I kind of wanted to go over what's the same and what's a little bit different. So 2021, last year we had the Foxridge project, and that's a really important project because that has one of the lowest pavement condition indexes on any arterial street in the city. But after talking with City Administrator Smith and just kind of looking at our funding, you know, with the sales tax renewal coming up with our budget hit from COVID, we thought we should consider not applying for a project for 2021, and possibly we could do some residential street projects, you know, once we get our street preservation program approved. So 2022 is the Johnson Drive Lamar to Row project. That's the same as last year, and that's a joint project with Roland Park. 2023 is where we're recommending moving Foxridge to. And originally that was the Johnson Drive Metcalf to Lamar project. And that's a really important project, and hate to move it out, but it's a very expensive project, about $10.8 million. And we really needed to try to fix in the, put in the Foxridge project. So right now we're moving it out maybe to 2026, but there's a possibility that could change. We recently applied for STP funds with Mark, and we'll know, well, they've changed the whole process. So we'll get an idea this year. We'll know this year if we have funding. One thing I wanted to note is that they've changed their process, and it may be more difficult to get STP funds like we've done in the past. And so just wanted to let you know about that. But once we hear back from Mark, we can provide you with an update on that. So 2024 is the road Johnson Drive to 59th Street, and that is the same as last year, and that's a joint project with Fairway. And then the 2025 is the new project, and that's a Knoll Avenue, Martway to 63rd, and that would be a joint project with Prairie Village. I just want to go back to 2022. As part of that Johnson Drive, Lamar Row, that's when we can, if we decide to go down to striping it to 3 lanes, you know, that's when we can incorporate that into the project. So the costs for each project have been increased to include contingency and inflation, because normally you put it in today's dollars, but we wanted to go ahead and add in an inflation cost because the projects are going to be, you know, further out than this year. And those are based on current cost estimates obtained from our on-call engineer. I also wanted to mention that the proposed treatments may change next year based on the results of our proposed street maintenance plan that we're working on with Stantec. and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
I might just, if I might, so the push for the Foxridge project, which I know has been a very important project for us as a city and for you as a council, is, as Celia mentioned, that is a cash flow issue for us. And we've known all along that we were not going to be able to successfully cash flow that project in one particular year. And so all of the projects, even though the Johnson Drive project that is now pushed out of the 5-year plan, have sort of maintained their same priority in terms of how we would anticipate that they occur. But most of the pushes are really done to make sure that we have revenue available to support these larger projects like Foxridge and Johnson Drive.
Thank you, Laura. Do you have
Holly,
any other questions? Yep.
I have a couple of questions, comments. And I apologize if I am blanking or I'm forgetting something about the Johnson Drive piece, but I remember we had some pretty thorough conversations about Johnson Drive and potentially taking it down to 3 lanes. But I don't know that in my mind, the horizon was 2022, which feels like, you know, I know it is just around the corner, but it feels very far away. And I was just seeing if anyone here can refresh my mind if there was another conversation surrounding this, or if COVID just totally scratched my memory.
No, Hillary, I totally agree with you. And I think that we've made that pretty clear at a couple of the council retreats that was a priority amongst all of us. And honestly, I keep seeing that one kind of get pushed down the road and not hearing much more about it. So I think at the very least, if we're saying it can't happen until 2022, I'd want to find out a little bit more about what the give and take on that would be. And, you know, where are we at with even doing some analysis on whether we should be doing it and what kind of impacts that'll have. I mean, I just don't ever see anything happening with that. And it's kind of
I can answer that.
Let me jump in first, Celia.
Okay.
So I don't believe, and you can double check me, I don't think this project has moved. I think it was in 2022.
Yes.
It's not been pushed back. And I know that the council has expressed in some of the retreats that concern that why wouldn't, if that is a priority, and we've been talking about it, you know, 18, 19, 20, why 2022? Part of that was aligned, and we've started that conversation and never finished that, but that would be aligned with when you would expect to see the regular surface treatment on the street based on when it was originally constructed. So that would be the cycle on which we would be going back. And so the question would be, if you want to do it off cycle or advance that, we can, but that's why it was originally plugged into 22. So we haven't pushed it from the point at which we initially plugged it into a 5-year CIP. In terms of, and Celia can elaborate on this, but in terms of what has happened, I think the last conversation and the direction right before we hit sort of winter and then COVID issues was we were going to look at traffic studies along Johnson Drive and pedestrian counts, traffic counts and pedestrian counts. The construction of the locale and then which blocked and resulted in some lane closures, as well as then being under stay-at-home orders, meant that we weren't going to get meaningful either traffic count data or pedestrian count data. So Celia can speak to where we are and how we're positioned to, you know, to bring that back.
You're exactly correct. I mean, we were getting ready to go on the traffic counts, and then locale shut down a lane for forever, for about a month. And we didn't want to do that because traffic, we wouldn't get a true account. And then we were getting ready to go again and COVID hit and there wasn't a lot of traffic. So we really didn't want to do that when we, as Laura said, we wouldn't get that amount. They Olson has looked at the crash data. I gave them all the accident reports. And so they're taking a look at the counts. And, you know, a lot of times when you look at the accidents, you look at what caused this accident and is there a way to redesigned to reduce accidents. But, you know, at traffic signals, you're always going to have rear ends, and there's not a lot we can do about that, maybe signage or things like that. So that's what they're doing now. And they've already been authorized to do the traffic count and the ped count, and it's just merely a matter of waiting for the traffic to come back. Also, the ped count, we wanted to wait until springtime when people were out walking to get an accurate count of that. So that's kind of been what's going on.
If possible, is there any way we can start doing some speed analysis and maybe get one of the devices out there to start tracking some average speeds during certain times of the day? Because it's actually when it's not that busy that it becomes a lot more dangerous, because people just fly through there. I had it happen again the other night where I had a pretty close call out there, to be honest. And, you know, it's really frustrating to see people flying through there 40 plus miles an hour, because it is a big wide open road. And when there's nobody else out there, you know, like this was Saturday night or, you know, later in the evening, that's when it really becomes a problem. And that's where I think we need to really be mindful of pedestrians that are going to be out and about, especially as more establishments open along Johnson Drive. And I really hope that we continue to see some movement. And if it means we don't do anything till 2022, great, but let's at least find some reasons why we're not looking to take anything forward. And it's a safety issue to me, and I don't feel like that warrants waiting just because we want to have it fall in cycle with the road being redone. It's a safety problem.
Yeah.
The other.
Sorry, go ahead, Celia.
Sorry. The other thing is that this is a joint project that's been planned with Roland Park. So, you know, they're doing their little piece of it. And so we just would need to go back and talk to them and see, you know, we could always, I guess, exclude their part, but it would make sense to do it together to see if they would be willing to change the date, because they've been programmed on this year.
Yeah. I just wanted to echo what Nick said on the speed piece. You know, I stopped at Urban Prairie for takeout coffee earlier today, and same thing. It wasn't all that busy on Johnson Drive, but people were flying by and not recognizing the crosswalk. And I think we had some discussion before about adding additional signage to the crosswalk that indicated it was a violation of state law not to stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. So I'd really like to see that, and to see the speed studies and possibly additional enforcement in that area underway as well.
Okay.
Dolly, just a follow-up. I know, Laura and Celia, you all know whether 2021 is a viable option to move this up to, and it would, you know, affect Roland Park, but is there any way to explore bumping this from 2022 to 2021 and potentially getting CARS funding, or is that just not possible?
You can do it. That would be what you would be doing in this process. So you would move it potentially, and that would be we would submit that project.
Right, but I know that you have, you know, great insight as to what CARS is going to fund and what they won't fund, and if we apply, then we can't reapply, all of those weird stipulations that they have. So I'm just wondering, you know, why nothing for 2021 if, you know, the general consensus on council is to, you know, expedite something to have it completed earlier.
So if that's the decision, we can go talk to Johnson County and make sure that they're good with us, you know, because we kind of went back and forth on what to do on 2021, whether we can move that project up, and I can talk to Park.
Yeah.
I did have one follow-up question tied to that timing piece. You mentioned that if we don't do this in 2021, there's a possibility of being able to do some residential street work. How confident do we feel about that possibility? And if we did move this, will we not have enough dollars to pursue any of the neighborhood work?
Laura, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
Well, I don't have the budget right here in front of me, but I think I know it well enough. I think if you could move it, if you move Johnson Drive into 2022 and or 2021, I'm sorry, and we're able to get CARS funding, you would be able to do maybe a little bit more. I mean, we have historically budgeted about $350,000 for residential street maintenance. And so you would be looking at, you know, some portion of that available this year and then next year.
That's not a lot of money, but maybe we can find a surface treatment or a curb and, you know, something like that. We'd have to look at what we could do with that amount of money.
Sally?
Yeah, Ken?
In terms of the preservation plan, how soon are we going to be able to see that? And do we have a sense of which the priorities are with regards to the street plan if we were to do it in 2021?
So Stantec is a little bit behind due to COVID, where, you know, they weren't out and about doing anything, but they presented me with some preliminary information. I need to go back and do some other work for them because when they did it in 2017, they didn't have the width of the street. So I need to go back and give some of that. And then with the chip seals, that's the difficult part because it was covered over. So trying to figure out what the chip seals were done after Stantec drove the streets and created the PCI. So I need to go out and hopefully this week and take a look at the chip seals and see if the PCI still stands or it's improved. So I have a little bit of work to do, but we're really close to, you know, to coming up with something to start the dialogue. And once I get that done, I think, Laura, we talked about giving an update to the council.
I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian on this issue of moving Johnson Drive up to 2021, because I do believe that our street program has been really lacking, and I would give it priority if we can accomplish that in 2021 rather than to do Johnson Drive and moving a CARS program up to 2021.
I actually agree with that too, Ken. I think that we've kind of neglected some of the residential streets a little bit and maybe haven't paid as much attention as we should in favor of some of these bigger projects. My thing with Johnson Drive specifically is, and maybe the only option is to do it when we redo Johnson Drive, there's a safety problem there. And we've been bringing this up for years now. We've had it, again, come up as priorities. Celia, this is before you're even involved with the city, but this has been a priority that a number of us have brought up over and over. And I've seen just nothing happen with it. You know, no further analysis, no further information on what kind of costs we might be looking at. Is there an option to get us by to make things better for a while until we can redo the street that doesn't cost as much money? I don't know, but
yeah,
we got a safety problem there. And I think that we really need to look into that a little bit further. And just my 2 cents, I guess. And Ken, I'm totally with you on the residential streets. I feel like that's been a little bit those have been a little bit underserved the last few years because of other issues. And we got to try to figure out what we can do there. But the Johnson Drive thing, I at least really hope that we can get some analysis done on what we can do. If it's not, you know, taking it down to 3 lanes, if there's some other option, something we can do to slow traffic down and make it safer for everybody.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Yeah, Trent?
Thanks for those comments, Nick and Ken. I kind of fall in that camp too. I'm a little worried that if we were to kind of give the street program not its fair shake in 2022 and swap it with Johnson Drive, that would kind of be our one area of window of opportunity in the next few years to get something like that done. And I know that that's been high on the priority of some of the residents I've talked with. So I wonder if there's some sort of way we could make a stopgap to, you know, bridge us to when we would do the Johnson Drive project, you know, maybe like some increased signage or some of those more short-term things to try to help slow down the traffic until we kind of get to the main antidote there in 2022. So I don't know. I sort of agree with kind of the last couple of comments on the priority.
All right. I had a comment, and then I think Hillary has a question. I would just, I guess, fourth what Ken, Nick, and Trent just said. I've been hearing a lot from residents on the residential piece, but I 100% agree with Nick that there is a safety problem that needs to be addressed. And I do think we could be doing things with signage or increased enforcement in that area. And so maybe we could see some thoughts or plans on that in July or August, even if we stick with this timeline in the CARS project. I don't know if that would be possible, you know, for Celia and the chief to come back with a proposal related to that. That's just my thoughts. And then I think Hillary had a question.
Yeah, so I don't mean to move on to another topic of my concern, but I'll move on to another one involving Foxridge Phase 2, which I know, Laura, you had touched on. But, you know, I understand that the CARS plan here is fluid and it's living, but, you know, this removed from CIP and the change in our CIP process makes me feel somewhat confused on how we're prioritizing major projects like this, particularly with Foxridge, because please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Foxridge Phase 2 was originally poised for 2019, then 2020, now 2023. And, you know, I just want to look at these projects in a greater context of what was our CIP and continues to be our CIP, but in terms of what the process is, I'm unclear. So anyways, that's just more of a comment of, I want to make sure that priority projects that were identified for a reason don't just get pushed back years and years. And I understand there's not a revenue stream there, but you know, that creates a problem, obviously. But
yes, that creates a really big problem.
Right, but you know, it connects to the Johnson Drive issue, because I feel like this is just a very kind of in a vacuum look at this CARS funding piece, but it's really a broader priority of what some key projects are taken out of context, at least from my understanding, and I can't speak for anyone other than myself.
So the street preservation program, once we finish that analysis, we're going to have, you know, looking at all the pavement condition indexes, looking at what the treatment should be and about when we should do it. So it'll kind of prioritize and set those arterials up. And then it's really a council final decision. I mean, of course, staff will recommend, you know, how much money do we have for residential? How much money do we have for these arterial car streets? And then, you know, we'll have our plan developed. So, you know, things could change depending on development, or a street really deteriorates faster than we want. But I think we'll have a good idea of what we need to do. We'll know our funding stream. And then, so it won't change all the time.
Right, and Celia, I don't want you to take my thoughts and think that, you know, I don't think you're doing a good job. It's hard for me, and I'm sure other people on council, when you have constituents asking you about their residential streets or asking you about a project. Yeah. And we've been promising them the street program since 2008. So when it was originally promised to us. And so I'm really excited that we're just about over that hill, but at the same time, you know, it's hard for me to see 2021 without a project designated there, knowing that we have these priorities that we've all agreed upon and identified, and not wanting to see, not that we all don't want to see them move ahead, but so those are my thoughts for the night.
Well, I think it's also important to remember that these are only your CARS projects. So this doesn't reflect your entire, you know, street CIP, 5-year CIP. That's going to come forward as we work through the rest of this budget process. And I think that gets Councilmember Thomas to some of your questions about, you know, how do projects move and how do we prioritize? Because that's really that part of the conversation where we start to look at, and we'll take all of these same projects and we'll lay them out on that CIP and look at those from a budgetary standpoint and have the conversations to be able to say, if we want to spend, you know, $500,000 a year on the residential street program, and then here's our existing debt service, and then what are our other capital project priorities, whether those are larger projects or we want to add more maintenance, here's the dollar amount that it's going to take to do that. And that's where we have the conversations about do we want to look at savings in other areas? We have dedicated mill right now for street projects. We have a street sales tax, which is going to expire in March of 2022. So those conversations kind of help set those priorities. And then yes, some things do move from year to year because of other budgetary issues that might come in, but it's not. The CARS piece is just one part of that overall CIP that we look at every year.
Just a reminder that when we have the last step of our process in developing the plan is coming up with, what if we had 500,000? What would it take today, to bring up our streets? What's our ideal number that revenue we would have? And then we go back and say, what if we had only 300,000? What if we had 500? What if we had 3,000 or
million? Pick 3 million.
Thank you. So, and then we get to decide, and it'll show us, it'll kind of project what the overall network would be, because if you only spend so much money, that's all you have, but then your overall network condition goes down. So you'll get to see all that, and that'll help make the decision, or at least be aware.
I just think some of the frustration, at least on my part, and I know from talking to some other people on the council, is that I think there have been a couple of us that have been basically asking that question for 3 or 4 years now. What would it take if we really wanted to tackle some of this stuff? Is there an option to go out there and maybe look at some bigger debt funding to get a bunch of stuff done, especially with rates being as low as they're ever going to be? Is that a possibility? I don't know, right? But I feel like I've kind of been asking that for quite a while, and I know it's you haven't been here that whole time, Celia. So don't take it the wrong way, but it just seems like we haven't gotten too much of an answer on some of that. And the whole PCI street condition stuff has been going on for what, 2 years now? It seems like we're just, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be getting to anywhere where there's what I feel like is good actionable data that we can make decisions around. I just hope we're getting close to that.
We're getting close. But I appreciate your thoughts, and I understand your frustrations.
All right, any other questions on the CARS plan?
Me, one more time. I know I said I was done, but I know that maybe not everyone here would agree with this, but I really would like to see Johnson Drive moved up before 2022. That is 2 full years away. It could end up being longer if it's pushed to the end of 2022. And that's all I have. I'd really like to see Johnson Drive, and maybe it is that stopgap, but I just don't know that we're ready to approve this without being a potential other option. And I feel like we had a pretty, as Nick said, we had a pretty serious conversation about the urgency of this and haven't seen other options. So seeing this is kind of surprising, because we said, so that's my last little sentiment there.
I want to ask a question of you, Hillary. Are we talking about urgency with regards to safety, or are we talking about the surface? Because this is really an issue of surface, not safety. And I think let's separate those two issues apart.
Sure. Well, they're tied together because the reseal would allow for a 3-lane plan that would slow speeds based on, empirical evidence, I think is the issue on that point, Ken. I mean, if we were to take this to council non-consent, could we get more information from staff by our council meeting on what some stopgap measures would look like, so that we could take those into consideration on deciding the year? Would that be possible?
Yeah, I wanted to really get the data and have them look at, based on all the data, is what I wanted, because I understand that some really want it, and I think there's been some pushback from the business owners. So what I wanted to do is have the data to back it up so that we could support it. Now, we could go out there tomorrow and stripe it as a 3-lane, and then we have to tear that out and do the UBAS. I mean, we could do that, but that was the whole thought process. And so I could try to come up, I could try to come up with some options, but we really need to look at all that before we put up signs. But maybe there is something that we can do in the interim.
Yeah, and Celia, I agree on the data piece, but I'm wondering, you know, if we could discuss some potential options like, you know, the mandated by state law signage or additional, you know, even particular announced speed traps like you would do, you know, with a DUI checkpoint.
Those
things
signs
like that
don't actually work. We need to make physical changes to the road. I'm not saying 3 lanes is the only option. Maybe there are some other options there. But I really think you have to make physical changes to that section of the road if you're going to really have a meaningful impact on traffic. We've tried putting, you know, the speed warning thing down there that shows people how fast they're going. We've done a number of those things, and I don't think it really makes a difference. You have to physically change that road.
Solly, if I may,
yep.
There have been a number of things already tried. We have tried increased enforcement. Yeah. We have tried putting in speed tables. We have tried putting in the signs in the road saying that it's, you know, it's a state law, you got to stop for pedestrians. That actually caused a problem, was taken back out. We have tried putting in enhanced signals. And I'm sure there's more. I mean, a lot of things have been tried. So
we put in a stoplight.
We put in a stoplight.
Right.
So there's a lot of things, that have been tried. And from my perspective, I don't know, and I'm not, again, Celia, maybe you know the things that I don't know about, but all of those efforts really haven't solved the problem. So I guess I agree with Nick that I think we're beyond stopgap. So what I'm hearing is we really need to delineate where our CIP dollars are going. Ken's talking about street surfaces needing to be fixed, and we're talking about Johnson Drive and changing driving habits, and I think it's physically changing the road to make it so logistically they can't go as fast because we can't seem to slow them down in another way. So I'm sure the staff can put something together that puts all those pieces into the puzzle and come back with some kind of a recommendation.
The question I have, though, in terms of decision for cars, when is the deadline for submitting this plan?
Well, they need it this month. I mean, for the 2021. I think we can probably change the others if we need to, but I think the 2021 is really where they're focusing on.
And if we were to submit it for 2021 and then not be able to get the data, et cetera, due to COVID and other, you know, issues and whatnot, then if we were to want to bump it to 2022, we'd risk losing that funding. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
And also the other piece of this is we really wanted to do, in my mind, a comprehensive community forum to explain to people what we're doing it, why we're doing it, options looked at, because I don't think this is something we want to just ram down our citizens' throats. I would really like to hear, because I do know there are some business owners who are concerned that if you change the character of Johnson Drive, you change their business. I believe there are enough studies out there that indicate they have done before and after analysis of when these changes are made. So I would like to hear what the citizens have to say, because I've heard anecdotal evidence from a number of citizens that say and I've experienced it myself, like you have, that it is sometimes dangerous to go across Johnson Drive. But I want to make sure that we're also engaging the residents.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like to me then, from the data needed and that citizen engagement piece, given sort of world events, then sticking with 2022 and focusing on residential for 2021 might make sense, but I don't know where others have landed on that.
Solly, that would work for me, definitely. I'd like to see it retained into 2022. We need a lot more of engagement, data, before we up it, in my opinion. And I agree, it's too dangerous, but I mean, you know, it could be much safer, but I think with all the information that we need, retaining it in 2022 would be appropriate. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
I guess I would like to see staff do the analysis on the dollars and the projects and see how they've heard of our opinions, right? They've heard priorities, yep, and see what they can come up with to best match the priorities that we've outlined.
Mm-hmm.
So, to that end, I guess I would entertain a recommendation for council.
Yeah, I'd recommend that we go with the current table as it is, non-consent.
Second.
Non-consent and further discussion at council meeting sounds like the plan. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to our next action item, which is Lamar Avenue, Foxridge Drive to Shawnee Mission Parkway Bike Lanes Contract Award. Celia.
So as you can see, when you're out driving, the Lamar project is underway and there's a lot going on. The good news is that right now they're way ahead of schedule. So I know it's pretty inconvenient for drivers, but they're hoping to get all the patching done this week. Now we have a little slowdown because we're gonna have to have the closure at 51st and Lamar, but they're hoping to get it all done by the end of the month. And now I hate to throw that out there and something happens, but so it's really moving along. And so the bike lane portion and the permanent pavement markings will be constructed as a separate project because KDOT administers it using the Safe Routes to School funds that we got. And so we did receive the maximum $68,000 in federal funding. So KDOT bid the project in May 2020, and their total cost based on the construction bid and inspection is $164,000. So our share would be $96,000, which is minus the Safe Routes to School funds. So the good news is that we have a little bit of savings already. So we're not over on that amount. So we're starting to see a little savings back on the project. And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but this isn't just the bike lanes, it's the entire pavement markings for a 2-mile stretch. So we're also doing thermoplastic. We're not doing painting because it doesn't last as long. So all the traffic control, the arrows, the center line, striping, all the bike lanes are part of this. If it's awarded, KDOT's estimating 25 days. Honestly, I don't see it taking that long. And if that's the case, we'll have less inspection costs. We don't know exactly when that portion's going to start. That's kind of in KDOT's court, but we're gonna have just some temporary, center line markings until they come in with the permanent. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, any questions for Celia?
I have a quick one. Has the COVID-19 pandemic made any changes in staffing at KDOT or the county or any of our project goals relative to timing?
They were all, I think KDOT wasn't working for a while, and then Johnson County and KDOT's been, working from home too. So that's kind of slowed this whole process. But I think right now we're on track and we shouldn't see any more slowdowns.
Excellent, thank you.
Right, any other questions?
I suggest we move this to consent.
All right, everyone good with that? Thank you, Celia.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our last action item, which is resolution of a special purpose permit for Sandhills Brewing. Brian, Scott, and Kaitlyn. Oh, Brian, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Sandhills Brewing approached the SAF actually last fall about the possibility of utilizing a portion of the sidewalk in front of their location on Johnson Drive for an outdoor dining area. And that to us was something kind of new at the time. We told them we look into it over the winter, and then of course things kind of got busy. But they approached us again in April about wanting to do this, and it became much more timely given everything going on with COVID, and eventually the requirements that when they opened, they'd have to practice social distancing and so forth. So that extra space provided by an outdoor dining area on the sidewalk would help in kind of addressing those needs. This kind of dovetails nicely into a larger discussion that staff has been having for several years now since Johnson Drive was redone, and that is the activation of Johnson Drive, or in particular the sidewalks in Johnson Drive, and the use of those sidewalks by businesses and the public. We often see, as we walk down Johnson Drive, maybe a cafe table in front of a coffee shop or a bakery, or a bench in front of an ice cream store, a place where somebody can sit down and enjoy a beverage or a delight of some type. And it creates that kind of active space, public space, that is so vital for a vibrant downtown. Just basically people being down there, enjoying themselves and creating that vibrancy. And of course, outdoor dining kind of takes that to the next level. Sandhills is needing the outdoor dining, as I said, a little bit to expand their space. Also, they want to engage in that activity outdoors. But in doing that, the state law requires that they actually have to have an almost kind of defined area with sort of a three-dimensional type of obstruction or something that helps to define that area, a wall or a railing of some type that helps to define that area. So with that was about the time Kaitlyn started with us in early April. So I put her to work. Thought this would be a great project for our new planner. And so she went out and did some research with some other communities in the area, in the region, and came up with some design standards and put those into we call a sidewalk cafe handbook. It's not fully fleshed out yet, and it's not something that we've really shared with much of the staff at all. So it's still very much kind of a draft document, which is why we did not include it tonight. But we did use it as a kind of a guideline in evaluating the application that was submitted by Sandhills. And so with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to kick it over to Kaitlyn, and I'm going to let her talk about the application itself and the use of the handbook and some of the guidelines that she found in evaluating the application. Kaitlyn? Are you there, Kaitlyn?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see that? No.
Yep.
Right, so you can see here kind of the site plan that's drawn out. Let's see. There we go. So this is, I'm trying to get it to zoom out here. Of course, as soon as it's typical to say. So you can see here, like this would be the brewery. So this is the building. If you're walking out of the door, you're gonna see kind of a bar top here that swings along into more of like an open table area. And they included a few different visuals here that you've seen in your packet. This is kind of what their patio looks like at their other location in Hutchinson, Kansas. And some different elements. These are just conceptual, won't be the exact components that you might see in front of the brewery in Johnson Drive, but just conceptually, just to get kind of a visual of it. The part along the front here, let's see. Apologies, I'm struggling with the with the difference in size here. So the part along here will be more of like a bar top concept. So like a fence that acts as a bar top as well. And this concept is kind of displayed in this photo here. Something you might have seen at other breweries or restaurants around the area. And then once it opens up into the more wider space, you're gonna start to see the picnic table type of styles as I understand it. And Joe's here and can provide more context on that as well. But just to kind of show you some of the logic behind how the site plan was created, you're gonna see the 6-foot clear path reflected on the site plan. So that's a standard that is adapted from NACDO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials. It's the same standard that you'll see in like everywhere from downtown Lawrence, Kansas, all the way to Austin, Texas. It's a pretty standard clear path because it provides enough space for pedestrians to comfortably pass and enjoy the sidewalk. Also provides enough space for 2 wheelchairs to pass each other. And then you kind of see it open up once it clears a retaining wall over here to kind of a larger area. And you can see that here on the aerial image too, where it has, you know, those seat walls that are along Johnson Drive, kind of gives away into a larger space. Where the patio or where the sidewalk area is wider than 12 feet wide, this standard is to retain at least 50% of the sidewalk for public space, just kind of to keep the balance between the public use of the sidewalk and also supporting the patio for Sandhills. So it also kind of avoids a situation where the pedestrian would have to reroute totally out of their way into kind of this area along the bottom. So the kind of the concept, the logic is written out here, and you can see the clear path. The second component of this is just different barrier measurements, making sure that everything's ADA accessible. The main consideration here is just that if a pedestrian has visual impairment using a cane and doing that cane sweep, they'll be able to note the barriers. So different standards applied here. And then the last element is just, you know, providing enough overhead clearance for overhead as the string lights and umbrellas. So that's really kind of the logic behind how we were working with Sandhills to kind of create a concept that balances the patio space, the Kansas requirement to delineate that space with a barrier, and then also balance the needs of pedestrians and making sure the space feels comfortable for public use as well. Happy to answer any questions, or Joe, did you have anything to add?
Joe Zyke with Sandhills also with us tonight.
Hi, everybody. You know, this plan was to you know, offer, yes, like they said, some more space and to bring some outside seating and open up our area. I will say that, you know, currently with the COVID situation, there's probably more chairs than out there will be currently, because we just can't social distance on a patio that would fit this size. But the one thing that we went back and remeasured a little bit, that the wall is the marker. So there where it says sidewalk in the middle, and please forgive my terrible handwriting, it says 6 feet. It's actually a little bit larger than a 6 feet gap because we'll maintain that 50% clearance. It's more closer to like 7 and a quarter, I believe, is what we remeasured. So that gap will remain that large there. And so it's not quite to scale after I kind of re-understood the law, or the rule. So just a heads up on that.
Joe, I did have, oh, sorry, go ahead, Debbie, then I'll go.
I just want to mention, Joe, this is exactly to me what this community is wanting. This looks wonderful. I love your picnic tables. I just think this is a great concept and a great opportunity for us to get on board with this. This looks like an urban setting where people can come by and go in, come out, and it looks great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to the plan.
Yeah, and Joe, I would echo that, and I'm glad to hear you mention social distancing. That was what my one question as we're talking about, creating a plan that could attract more people, which would generally be a good thing. I was wondering, since you are asking for a special disposition of sorts from the city here, if you plan to follow the Ad Astra guidelines. I know everything's not mandatory now, but just what your plan is for handling COVID while operating a brewery.
It's a pretty in-depth Instagram post we put out on everything for what we're doing, but the gist of it, starting Friday and Saturday, we are going to switch to a reservation-only system, and we're only going to be open those 2 nights this week. We're going to see how it goes. The maximum people that we're going to have, excluding employees right now, is going to be 24 people in the building at one time. So currently, the way the reservations will work is you're allowed to book a table, and you'll prepay. And this will be the first time we're going to offer an experience with a flight type of situation. So you'll come in and you'll have your first ever flight at Sandhills. We're going to limit the amount of people with the reservations, with extra tableside service. So no, you won't be coming to the bar anymore. So to come get your beers and standing in a group or huddling, you'll actually get tableside service. Until personally, I'll say until we feel comfortable. The Ad Astra plan actually moves faster than we feel really comfortable with. So we want to take it slow, and this is our attempt to try to have some sense of normalcy of coming to a bar and hang out, but keeping everybody safe too.
Yeah, and so I assume that would extend to any plans with the outside area with once ready. So we'll either. With the outside area, we'll definitely pull back on the amount of seats that will be there. So if we don't start off with, I think I have 2, 4, 6, 9 bar seats or something. We may start off with 4 or something like that, and then maybe have another small 2 top or something to spread it out and limit how many people would go out there. We do have the issue of only having the single door in and out of the front of the brewery right now. With that, the server would have to cross paths with people coming in still to go beers and such. So what we've talked about doing is maybe just having those people available for not carry out beer, but they would serve at the same counter that the carry out people would come to. So limit people coming in and out of the exact same door all the time. So they may come in, they would get their beer and take it back out themselves, and then we can kind of control it that way. We also will be putting up signs and such that'll ask you to please state your seat. Unless you need to use the restroom, please don't congregate at the restroom, some things like that too. So great.
Well, I would just say, as somebody who has been to Sandhills Brewery more than once, Joe, what you are doing over there is fantastic. You guys have been a great addition to the neighborhood. And my only concerns were whether there were any ADA things. And it looks like you guys have been very mindful, as you've worked with Kaitlyn, to come up with plans to make sure that everything is still accessible and meets all of those guidelines. So I think it's fantastic. And I'll probably see you for a beer this weekend, maybe.
That'd be great. Yeah. We're excited to be back and kind of feeling a little bit normal.
Yeah, Ken?
Joe, I echo the positive feelings that I have about this. I think it's a great addition. I do want to ask, I guess, Kaitlyn and you both, the part that kind of angles into the toward the street. I was there today and I took some measurements, and I thought that it's a little too close. And I spoke with Brian this afternoon, and he indicated that there was some discussion about moving that wall to a slighter angle to allow better passage on the sidewalk next to the recycle can and the trash can.
Yeah, and again, this was my I will say my misunderstanding of the 50% rule that we've discussed. It lays out a little bit different than what I've exactly written here. So please take this as I think it might come back down. Where did I say? To the trash can, I believe, or the recycling to the building is actually more than, I think it's about 16 or 17 feet to that point. So if we follow the law, the rule, it would give us like roughly 7.5 feet or something like that to where the barrel in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen would be. So it just kind of changes everything, and it actually will widen it out and make that angle a little less prominent. I guess it'd be a little less like that. So
very good. Thank you.
And then I think Trent had a question next.
Yeah, thanks. Joe, thanks for presenting. I echo everybody else's comments. I love you guys in town, and it's a great atmosphere, and I think this is an awesome plan. I did just have one quick question. Is this something you guys plan on using year-round? In cold weather, would you have heaters out there? Is it more of like a summer idea? Just a little bit.
Anytime somebody would want to sit out there, we would love to have it open. I mean, you know, there's plenty of days in December that 60 degrees pops up and you're finding a light jacket and having out there. As for heaters, you know, unfortunately we are confined to space, and a heater does take up a little bit more room of the floor space. So I'm not sure how many heaters we could get out there or something, but that definitely be something we'd look at. You know, any extra seating we can get, if we can get about 20 to 25 people out on a patio in a day, that would be phenomenal for our revenue, for our presence, for everything. So it would only benefit us to increase those type of things.
Great.
Solly?
Yeah, Ron?
I do think this is a great idea. And I want to go back to what Brian talked about, is about activating the sidewalks. And Solly, you shared an article that you came across from Lawrence, where Lawrence is talking about reconfiguring Mass Street, the diagonal parking to parallel parking, so they can activate even more of their sidewalks. So this is a trend, for me, a new thing, but I'm a limited scope here. But so yeah, this is something that's being talked about a lot, about activating the sidewalks, and I think this is what we had envisioned for downtown.
Yeah, I think it's talked about a lot, and you know, the creating walkable cities, and that Lawrence was in particular looking at it as a way to support businesses during COVID by creating more space while keeping things safe. But yeah, I think it's a great experiment, and would love to see something like this expanded downtown. Any other questions? All right, if not, I'd entertain a recommendation.
Move to consent.
Sounds good.
Second.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you all. I appreciate you. Have a nice evening.
All right, we don't have any further action items this evening, but we do have one discussion item. Let's see, Kaitlyn, could we get you to X out of the screen share maybe? There we go. So our one discussion item is discussion on policy on use of drones with Penn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The discussion item tonight is about unmanned aerial vehicles or drones within the city of Mission. So during the April 2020 Parks, Recreation, and Tree Commission meeting, Parks and Recreation staff were discussing the long-range planning of Mission Parks, as well as some of the specific improvements at Mohawk Park. And commission members were discussing concerns associated with park use, the guests that utilize and patronize some of these public spaces, and then the proximity to private areas and drone use came up. Some of the citizen concerns specifically with our neighboring community, Prairie Village, were brought up, and the amount of time that council at Prairie Village took to deliberate and finalize an ordinance to adopt drone use within their city limits. was of particular concern. So at that point, Parks, Recreation, and Tree Commission members recommended that we bring before council an opportunity to discuss the benefits and challenges associated with drone use within city limits. And prior to that actually becoming a point of conflict on any of our private or public spaces. So keeping in mind that an ordinance has the ability to not only assist drone operators, but also city staff in creating clear expectations. So some of the most common purposes of drones are aerial surveillance, filmmaking, exploring real estate or construction, aerial acrobatics or deliveries. And then some of the most common risks are privacy infringement, radio frequency interference, loss of control, operator impairment, as well as personal injury and facility damage. Our neighbors, Prairie Village, Mission Hills, Mission Woods, have each adopted an ordinance within the last few years, and staff reached out to Prairie Village specifically and found out from their police that drone harassment is initiated by a citizen complaint, at which point an officer arrives on site and can cite the operator based upon their ordinance creating a Class C misdemeanor, which has an accompanying fine that cannot exceed $500. And it also includes a mandatory court appearance. So once the operator shows up in court, a judge can determine what that fine is and based off of the circumstances surrounding the citation. So if there's any discussion or interest in pursuing this further, staff can draft a policy or ordinance for action at the July 1st Community Development Committee meeting. Do you have any questions?
Yep, and just to clarify, so this is entirely proactive. There haven't been any known concerns relating to drones in Mission?
Correct. No drone use incidents that we know of. And interestingly enough, as a backstory, Prairie Village drone issue was brought to the forefront because Prairie Village was hosting a special event with about 100, 120 guests, and a drone operator was on site, and some guests were concerned that because it was such a large drone and people weren't familiar with it being so large, that it might fall and injure somebody. So that's kind of what was the catalyst in Prairie Village.
Okay.
So we haven't had any reports of any impaired drone operators or anything in the parks?
No reports of any drones use issues or impaired operators.
Great.
I had one question that might be more for Chief or for Laura, which is, do we have other, and maybe we would vary from Prairie Village in this respect, but do we have other criminal measures that we have geared towards citizen-initiated complaints rather than part of our regular police department operations? I don't know, it seems like that could create some issues. I mean, I know citizens can always call things in, but having it sort of be in that special system where it's not part of regular police enforcement.
I am not familiar enough to be able to answer that without doing some additional research. I don't know if the chief is, but we could certainly look at that and see if there are other parts of our code that would include something.
Yeah, and I didn't see anything in the draft that suggested it would have to operate that way either. So maybe that's just how Prairie Village is doing it in practice. But
I have a question, Solly.
Yeah, Debbie.
Do we have any current ordinances or any records on the book that would handle this situation right now? Is there anything comparable, like a nuisance ordinance or anything like that, that this could be an umbrella over this? So I just kind of look at each individual ordinance, and if we have something currently that this meets the intent on, I'd kind of like to just, not have rule after rule after rule if something already covers this. Is there anything comparable right now that you're aware of? Penn?
Is this for me?
Yes.
Not specifically. I don't know that it covers this nuisance specifically, but there may be something I'm just not aware of.
Okay. I don't think there is. I think if we look at our nuisance codes are geared very pretty tailored pretty closely to property code enforcement type issues.
Okay.
I was looking at the noise ordinance. I mean, you know, it doesn't really fall into a noise ordinance or a nuisance nuisance violation in that category necessarily. So it is such a specific type of equipment and activity that it probably would need its own. But I appreciate that if we can tag it on to an existing code and have it make sense, that's certainly preferred.
Sure. Thanks.
I will say from a law enforcement side, people's property lines don't just stop 10 feet up above their house. Property lines go pretty high up. We would have to look at it. Law enforcement without a search warrant in certain circuits cannot fly a drone over somebody's property without a search warrant. So it's something that we could look into, but we have disorderly conduct, which is to alarm, bother, anger, or harass another. I don't know that criminal trespass would work, but it's something that we could talk to David Martin about.
Good.
So staff here is looking for council consensus on if we want this to be drafted for a July item. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does anyone have thoughts? Yeah, Ken?
I'm supportive of going ahead and moving forward on this. I think that it's being proactive, and as long as it's not, you know, already stipulated in our ordinances, it probably is a good idea.
This is RC. I support going forward with this too. I just like to make sure that we keep our I know that we consulted with Prairie Villages PD, but also keep our PD in the loop with however we move forward with enforcing or policing it.
Absolutely.
Golly.
Yeah.
I agree with Ken and RC as well.
I'm
All
also
right.
okay with moving forward.
Okay, sounds like there's a general consensus to have this come back in July then.
Okay, staff will prepare a draft for you July 1. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. And then our last item for community development is department updates. Laura.
I don't have anything specifically, but I think Celia had a couple of updates that she wanted to share. And while she's unmuting, I think, unless Penn wants to elaborate, just a reminder that the community center will begin its first phase of reopening following all of our COVID-19 restrictions this coming Monday. So I know Penn and his staff have been hard at work training and running all sorts of practice drills and making sure they try to have the kinks worked out.
Yeah, we brought all our part-timers in groups of 9 or less and been touring the facility, social distancing, and gave them their face coverings that police was so kind to give to each one of them. So they've been very gracious and are excited to interact with patrons again. It's pretty exciting.
Penn, I did have one related question. I saw the proposed class schedule and it looked like some of the classes might be at the same time as the reserved vulnerable population hours. And so I was just wondering how that was going to work.
Yes, that's a great point. So a lot of the patrons that attend those classes previously, you may notice there's an overlap with that vulnerable population. So the stipulation with that, that class participation is they can show up, go specifically to that room for their class, and then must exit immediately afterward. They cannot utilize the facility during that time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
While you're there, can I just mention something that's unrelated for Penn? Thank you so much to your children for helping at the Harvesters event. They were amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. They really enjoyed it, and we had a great discussion about needs and equity, and so it was a great learning experience for them. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great kids.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give a quick update on Public Works. We're really getting the crews out in the field. We're doing a lot of base repair, a lot of crack sealing right now, and exciting to move and have some process. It's been pretty hot, but they've been out there getting work done. So that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. I kind of touched on the Lamar project. I am going to get an official schedule, but just to kind of reiterate a little bit is that they should be done with the concrete this Friday, except for some storm inlet tops that they're going to be replacing. They're moving down the road on the base repair and the joint repair, and that's going pretty fast. Next Monday, 51st and Lamar will be closed for 7 to 10 days while they do the stormwater. So they're trying to do everything that they can, and then once that's done, they'll come back in because they have some repairs in that area. And then we're really looking at milling the street, which I think they said 3 or 4 days, and then the UBAS. And so as long as they keep providing all the crews that they're providing, we're going to get it done. And I know it's inconvenient. We've had some residents complain about construction traffic parking on the side roads. And you know, some of that is that while they're preparing the curb, the concrete trucks have to be there staging. We could stage everybody on Lamar, but that is going to be more, you know, traffic delays and detours. So we're really looking, I think the project's going really well. And so we're really excited about it. And if you haven't been out to the Rock Creek retaining wall where it collapsed, that's looking pretty good. They've got in all the big riprap and got the concrete out there, and they put in large riprap. And then they're going to focus on the sidewalk. And we've talked, we think even though it's not a requirement to put up a fence, I think we need to go ahead and put that back in and talk to Emily and Laura about that. And we just think that would be important to do. So looking good. And then we're going to be talking about when we need to begin design for the permanent solution. We're going to look at the Black and Beach study that I haven't seen, but I understand they looked at a lot of that. We may do some inspections of the other channel to see, you know, hopefully there's no others that are imminent to collapse, but that's kind of the process we're looking at. And then the last update is Rock Creek, they're removing the trees. So they did a lot on the north side and they're working on the south side. And that's it.
Great. Anything else from staff?
I don't think so. I think that's it for this evening. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our CDC meeting then. Thank you.
This is Debbie. I think, can we take a 2-minute break, please, before we start with finance, if that's amenable to everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, 2 minutes. We'll see you back.
Should I put on some sort of music, or what do we do at a 2-minute break on a Zoom call?
Dance party.
That's right.
Can you sing, Emily?
Yes. I don't know how to answer that question, but yeah.
Actually, yes, she can.
Oh.
and very well. So.
Wow.
And so can Penn.
Oh.
That's right.
So next time maybe we'll have to work up a little show tune duet number for the two of you.
Intermission tunes by your mission staff.
We could have a lot of fun with that whole intermission kind of thing.
Crux, is there any testing of any sort of systems you'd like to do now? Or are you good to go?
Were you asking me that?
Yes.
Do you want me to try sharing my screen real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I had a last minute change of computers. That was awesome.
I can imagine you're a little...
That's good? I'm good. Okay.
Then if you hit presentation, I mean, yeah, right.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody back?
I don't think so. I think you really encourage them to take advantage of your generosity.
Becky, are you doing the presentation?
I am. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Excellent.
Nice to see everybody again.
No.
This is a new camera angle for me, Emily. I've never used this monitor.
That's right. I normally can see more of your wall than that.
I know, nothing like test driving a new monitor, right, when you're giving a presentation.
Here they come back.
Mayor and Nick are getting their steps in during our meeting. The men about town or something. I don't know.
That's right.
Although I want to know if Nick,
I was just letting the dog outside quick.
Are you bringing Fluffy Fresh for all of us? That's a really cruel like background for you to have on.
Maybe tomorrow. We'll see.
Oh.
Okay, are we back?
I think we might be back.
We're back.
I think we're back.
Hillary, one more.
Hillary, we've got one more.
There she is.
Okay, we ready to get started? Okay, yeah. Here we go. Welcome to the Finance Administration portion of our committee meeting tonight. We will be meeting remotely through Zoom, just as we did with the Community Development Committee meeting. And first we don't have any public hearings, but that's first on the agenda. We will be accepting public comments. We can either take some now, or you can do that via the chat menu. Just put a question out there on the chat line, which is on the lower level, and we'll respond accordingly. First, we have public presentations. This is information only. And first we have Becky from Crux, who's going to make a presentation. Emily, do you want to introduce Becky, please?
I would love to. Thank you. We have the whole Crux team actually, and I'm sure they'll address that, but there are more of them than just Becky, which is great to see as usual. We've, as you all know, you've worked with Crux already through the interview process, and they're here to share the results of the research, which has been the lion's share of their attention, even though they've been doing quite a bit of helping with us launching several programs in the interim time, the market included. So I'll turn it over to Becky, or Malia, either one.
Well, thank you. I'll take it. Yeah, Malia is here, our founder and CEO, as you know, and Kara Brooks, our social media director, and then Ryan Hembry also is here as well, our creative VP. So it's great to see everybody again, as I said, and we're going to try to condense 70 pages of research into 20 minutes, maybe 15 if we're lucky. So I'm going to go through this very quickly, but we will email these presentations in segments to you following this meeting. And if you want a bound printed copy, just reach out to Emily or Laura or me, and we'd be happy to get that to you. There it is. Laura's got it.
Your very own version. So there will be lots. We just didn't want you reading ahead in the presentation.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. All right. So, well, hello, thank you. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to partner with the city. This has been just a really rewarding project for all of us on the team as we've gotten to know the city and its people and kind of what makes it tick. So we're really just happy to be here and to share, as I said, a condensed version of our research. I think it ended up being 70 pages, give or take, when it was all said and done. And so, again, much more information in that document tonight, but we're just really going to give you the highlights for time's sake. So we'll get started with why are we here tonight. Just a quick recap. You know, years-long conversation within city staff about just there was a lack of consistency in the city's communications. And the city issued an RFP back in the fall, originally intended for Parks and Rec branding. Ultimately, they decided they should expand the scope of that RFP to include the entire city. And so at that point, we started partnering. And early on, the city defined some engagement goals. And so really, in addition to elevating that brand for the city and departments, it's looking at what are those communication strategies that are going to drive revenue at the community center. Are we communicating with people in the right places? Are we reaching out to people who maybe don't have access to or aren't comfortable with technology? You know, do we have consistent messaging? The answer to that is no, not really. And that consistency is so important, and that is one of the major things that we're going to help you achieve. So more goals listed here, but again, for time's sake, we'll move on and talk about the research. And so this is really what we've been up to since we last saw you. We've been working in the backgrounds. As Emily said, we have done quite a bit of work with her, talking to her and the team every week, but we've really been head down on this research project, just immersed in all things mission, really getting to know the people, hearing their voices. That includes each of you, of course. And so we started with, well, let me back up and say, this research took us about 400 hours, so it was a labor of love, I can assure you that. We did 16 interviews, 4 focus groups, and sent out more than 3,300 surveys to people just to gather that feedback. And I should point out that working with Emily and with Laura, we invited people from the business community, the faith community, education, nonprofit, homeowners, Parks and Rec. We really tried to just cut a wide swath and hear from as many people as possible and make sure people were included and felt heard. So we think that this consistent approach to inviting and engaging people really helped us get a good cross-section of the community. So while we were doing all of that, we started analyzing the data. So we did this research project. I like to call it a listening tour. And then we took all of that data and took a hard look at it and determined what was it telling us, right? And from there, we did these competitive and marketing audits. So we looked at communities around mission. We looked at all of your communication materials. There's quite a lot, really, to understand what you were communicating with people up until now. And I do, well, let me just continue this. So from there, we're developing recommendations. We do have some of those. We're not prepared to share those with you tonight. We wanted to focus on the research at this time, but let's see, sorry. I'm on the different version of the PowerPoint because of my computer goof at the last minute. Anyway, I want to just go back to the research really quickly. I want to tell you that this really is our North Star. As we go forward and partner with the city, we refer back to this document often to make sure we're still in alignment with the things that we heard from you all, from the focus groups, from the surveys. So just know that that is a document that doesn't sit on a shelf somewhere and we never refer to it again. It's very valuable to us. So looking ahead, so one of the first questions we asked each of you is, what does success with Crux look like? It's very important for us to all understand that. And you know, right off the bat, consistent messaging was the big response. It's also asking ourselves, are we communicating in a way that is engaging people? Are we doing all that we can to reach them where they are? We agree that, you know, the things on this list are the things that will define success with our relationship, and we do have a lot of ideas to already get started with this as soon as we wrap up the research phase. So the next question we posed to everybody was, what do you think of mission? How do you describe it? What adjectives would you use? And so again, I want to remind you that there are so many of these in the research document itself. So we only included the top 10 themes here. So I really encourage you to look at the research document because it'll show you, you know, by focus groups, what their comments were, as surveys, interviews, etc. So you can compare between those groups. I definitely want everybody's voices to be heard. That's why that research document itself is so important. Anyway, but the top brand perceptions that we heard really were community. We are a community with neighborhoods, welcoming, accessible, responsive and engaged. And we heard often, this is a city with a big heart near another big city. So just some of the things that we heard, really lovely things that people use to describe mission. So then we had to ask people, what are their negative perceptions about the city? And I don't think much of this will surprise you. Driveway tax, gateway delays, you know, those are things you've heard many, many times. But it's important for us to capture this information because these are the things that we need to surmount with our new brand rollout and communications. We want to replace these negative perceptions in people's you know, minds with those other messaging points about the positive attributes of mission and the aspirational attributes of mission. So, you know, just quickly, no distinct identity. There's, you know, boundaries are hard to tell, no signage, empty storefronts we heard often. There's too much fast food, there's not enough fine dining. So just a few of the comments people made, and this is very helpful for us again as we go forward. So now that we have kind of a good idea of what people, you know, really see as the positive attributes of the city and the negative, then we wanted to know what are the differentiators. So what makes Mission unique? And it started with Mission has a good heart. And we, again, heard that sentiment time and time again. People talked about the location. It is so convenient. They feel safe walking down Johnson Drive. It's that small town feel in the middle of a big city. They definitely recognize the asset that the community center and the parks and green space that Mission has. And they see that as a differentiator as well within Northeast Johnson County. And the thing that we loved also hearing was there's something here for everyone and everything you need is here, which just what more can you ask for, right? In a city, we thought that was really cool. So the next thing we dove into, and I apologize, I know I'm going through this really quickly. The next thing we dove into was communication. So we wanted to see how effective the city's current communication efforts are. And you know, the general feedback again here probably won't come as a surprise. It's what a lot of you expressed as well. But we also asked people what's on their wish list. And so consistency, again, was very high on the list of things that people want. That new website, doing a better job of telling the stories of the great work that city staff is doing and highlighting some of the city's accomplishments, some of those wins. These are the things that we're going to help with, helping people understand what it is that city government does for them on a practical level every day. And then, of course, helping make some recommendations for more signage. So all of these things very accomplishable for us as we move forward together. This was, I should say, this is the feedback that was from council, from the external interviews we did, and from the focus groups. We took a little bit of a different approach with the survey questions, and we asked people what are their preferences for receiving information from the city. And so as you can see here, it was, you know, email, Mission Magazine, Facebook and the website, and then Nextdoor was also high on the list. They also talked about their preference for all three Facebook pages. So the Parks and Rec, the cities, and the Mission Markets Facebook page. Those are the social channels people we spoke with or that we surveyed were going to find their information, as well as Nextdoor, doing a really good job keeping people updated on that Nextdoor channel.
Becky, let me ask you one quick question. Do you by chance have these different communication venues, the different Facebook, Twitter, etc., broken down by age group?
We do not. We do not. That's a good point, though. Yeah, we can look at that. Thank you. Yeah, great question. I hope somebody on my team is writing that down for me, please. So next, then we moved to audience, right? It's always really important when you're communicating to know who are you communicating with, who's your audience. And so really the responses ran the gamut from people just starting their careers to families to empty nesters, people who enjoy the outdoors, people who want to know the people that they're doing business with. That was important. Businesses that want that urban, suburban vibe, but don't want to pay the prices that it costs to do business in the crossroads, for instance. So really what we heard is, you know, Mission is for everyone. There. So That's good. That's good. That's a lot to work with. Moving on from that then to the competitive audit. And so this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There's a lot of it in the research document itself, just looking at the 4 cities that we evaluated. So we looked at Prairie Village, we looked at Shawnee, at Merriam, and at Roland Park. And we really looked at, you know, what are they doing in terms of their website and their PR, and how are they communicating on social media, and that, and did some benchmarking against the city of Mission. We just included this slide because we did find, you know, Prairie Village is doing a pretty great job with their cohesive branding. I mean, that North Star is everywhere you go in Prairie Village. And so we thought that there were some things that we could emulate from this very easily for Mission, and some things that we would maybe do a little differently as well as we go down the road here. Next up is social media engagement, and really just again comparing the 4 cities. And so, you know, Mission's doing a very good job, you know, unless you compare it to Shawnee, which is 7 times your size, which is an unfair comparison. You know, you're doing a very nice job with your social media followers, and the tone and the style and the messaging is really solid. So next we move into the marketing audit. And this is where we really dig in to see how you're communicating, what the brand is, what types of collateral you're putting out to communicate about various programs and initiatives. So starting with your brand identity, and as you can see here, you know, we can do a better job creating that uniform brand identity. That's one of our first marching orders, as a matter of fact. That's what we'll start establishing as we develop that brand identity, working together. And then after that, we'll create some brand standards so that across the organization, people know, okay, we use this logo for, you know, council meeting agendas and et cetera, things like that that just help people stick to those brand guidelines. We also looked at your website and your email. We have some ideas for making the website much easier to navigate. There is a lot of great information there. I mean, you guys do such a nice job communicating. We heard, you know, maybe it could be a little bit better organized and easier to find that information. So we have some ideas for that, and also for creating some custom images, maybe that are more specific to Mission. In terms of emails, again, great information. We can break that up with some visuals. We can maybe do some segmenting to different audiences so that we're getting targeted information into the hands of the people who want that information. And we're also interested in helping to build the database, so we're reaching more people this way. We took a look at all of the city's social media channels, the Parks and Rec social media channels, and the Mission Markets social media channels as well. And again, that's all in the packet. These are in good shape. You know, we've got some cosmetic things that we'd like to do, you know, fixing some of these profile pictures and cover pictures so that they are aligned with the brand that we ultimately develop. Adding some things there. We see this as where we can add on to the city's really great work already. So maybe some videos, some storytelling, some graphics, you know, things like that are what we're interested in helping with. We think you guys are doing a really nice job. So, okay. And then next to last, we looked at collateral. So this is all of the documents on your website. Emily provided us with a lot of these. And really just the takeaway here should be, you know, there's a lot of information going out to people, and it goes back to that consistency. You're doing a great job getting the message out there. Let's make it look uniform, branded, City of Mission. How do you make it consistent? That's going to be the challenge that we're going to be tackling together. More examples of that. And then the Mission magazine we looked at, which is just one of the most popular forms of communication, and it is beloved, and we heard that loud and clear, and for good reason. It is visually, it's stunning. The photographs are just really, you know, powerful, and you know, we want to enhance where we can here, but I would be wrong if I said we had some recommendations tonight, because we have to get in and really, you know, learn more about this, but we know that this is a really meaningful piece for the people of Mission. And then lastly, with collateral, we looked at Parks and Recs collateral. And so, you know, again, a lot of information. It's bright, it's colorful. You're doing a nice job there. There's some different looks that we can address and kind of bring that brand together again. Maybe make some of the facility rental documents, for instance, more enticing, maybe to bring in some of that business. I think one of the suggestions that Ryan had was putting floor plans in there or different ways to configure the space, you know, that would draw people in and give them a little more information up front. So different things like that, all in the research document, again, that we'd like to continue talking about with you. And then last but not least, certainly was signage and wayfinding. And so we drove and walked around the city looking for wayfinding and signage and just kind of seeing what we could see. This is one of the biggest concerns we heard across the board from all of the stakeholder groups, was that, you know, people just aren't really sure where the boundaries are. And you know, we think there are a lot of opportunities to introduce maybe some banners here on those lampposts, wayfinding, monument signage, for instance, that'll make Mission more visible to residents and businesses, certainly, but also to visitors and passersby. Your location, let's capitalize on it, right? So that really concludes. That is the fastest version of the research I've ever done. So next up was really talking about our next steps. And, you know, we want to share with, this is where my computer kerfuffle messed up. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'll send you the PowerPoint afterwards that has the right slides in it. But really our year one goals are to share the new brand with the community. Let's launch that into the community and celebrate it. We want to introduce some efficiencies and some SOPs to help staff communicators do their jobs more effectively, some sustainable practices that we know, you know, will be very helpful. We're going to measure engagement on the web, on your social media channels, and really look at driving engagement up month after month. And then we're also going to make sure that the strategy is really aimed at driving those Mission Parks and Rec registrations up as well. So again, next steps, if my slide was the one it's supposed to be, it's really important that we establish those clear roles and responsibilities. And we have just been delighted to work with Emily and the team. And I think that we're doing a really good job of defining and being very careful that we're not stepping on toes, but that we are adding values in the ways that the city needs right now. So we'll continue to do that across the departments as well as we move forward. And then we're also going to hit the ground running with developing the brand and the brand strategy, working with the city to execute that plan, and then, as I said, measure our progress towards our goals for that. And later this month, you can expect to see our 30, 60, 90-day plan to launch our engagement officially beyond the research phase, and some brand concepts as well later in the month. And of course, through all this, we stay in close contact with Laura, with Emily, and with Penn to just check in early and often. So I'm so sad you guys didn't get to see those last two slides. They were awesome. But anyway, with that, do you have any questions for us?
Before we open it up for questions, just quickly, Emily, you might weigh in on this. I know there are members of the Sustainability Commission that are on this Zoom meeting format. And I don't know if they have questions in the chat column, or Emily, if you want to take away from our meeting on Monday evening, what some recommendations or suggestions from that group would entail.
Sure, yeah. So at Sustainability Commission meeting, it was just a happy coincidence that we met on Monday, and that group has a number of goals that they had established for 2020, and they're kind of getting their footing back after the COVID-19 slowdown of things. And one of those messages, because sustainability is so much about education, they're wanting to develop a communication plan targeted specifically to sustainability. And so we were able to say that the Crux presentation would be tonight, and so we have some lookers on there to see how those can gel. So definitely, I mean, some of our posts and content already in terms of outreach, Mission Magazine content, and all of those things are tied to our boards and commissions. And so how those fold into our overall messaging what, you know, how they can help us and we can help them in terms of the, you know, just the amplification of those things is key to both groups, I think.
Great. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Becky. Open it up for questions. Who has questions for Becky?
Debbie, I had one question.
Sure.
And maybe the presentation will go further into this, but I saw some kind of smiling around, you know, mission is for everyone, mission is all things. And so I know that that can be good, but also perhaps a challenge to narrow in the message or know what direction to take. And so would that be part of that 30, 60, 90-day plan and the brand concepts when we'd hear more about that direction?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We can't just come out and say that. That would not be, anybody could do that, right? So, yes, we'll narrow that down. That 30, 60, 90-day plan is really going to be our guide for the next 3 months. It holds us accountable to the deliverables that we are working on. And that includes, you know, the brand concepts, rolling those out and presenting them to you on a monthly basis, to Emily, checking in with her weekly. So yeah, yes, I hear what you're saying, Sally, and we will take that into account as we develop the brand identity.
Sally, or I'm sorry, Debbie.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I did want to ask, I guess, Emily and Laura, to what degree that it's been helpful to have someone by your side to help respond to issues, or when have you engaged to respond to specific items that have come up during the couple months?
I have lots to say. Laura, do you have something to say?
No, go ahead. You're much more connected to that than I am.
Yeah. I'll say, I mean, I know we we have fielded questions from some of you about, did Crux help with this, or is Crux available for that? And I have just loved working with the team. And it's moral support, and then it's practical support, and it's planning support. And so we've had a little bit of everything. So for the market collateral, they developed it for us. So it was just like we've had with past external graphic designers, working with our team, using our kind of inspiration and thoughts for the season, and then launching that, getting us whatever piece we needed. So that's the tangible. The other things we're holding on, because of course we haven't gotten into the real process yet, but they're reinvigoration for our own team's motivation, I think. They've been consultants. So for the COVID-19 response video we shared the script, bounced ideas off, and then we took it from there. And then also just sort of refocusing energy on communications and the importance of it and the fun of it and the results of it and all of those things. So it's been at every stage already, even with the first few weeks before we even really get started, which Becky will say 400 hours, we're not even started, but we're not really even started, so.
Great.
I wanted to mention we had a chat comment come in from John Arnett, who was the former sustainability chair. Said the Crux information will be a great help in defining messaging for the Sustainability Commission. Looking forward to the detail for our discussion and use. Very timely info. Thanks, John. Okay, any more questions?
I think Hillary has one, and then I had one after her.
Sure, go ahead, Hillary.
Yeah, Becky, I just had a question. I apologize, I don't have the scope of work in front of me, but I was just going to see if, with the audit, if an evaluation of the city's events was part of what you all are doing.
So we didn't include that in this audit. I know it will come up as we start talking, you know, with individual departments and just getting our arms around what they're doing and what their needs are. But no, it's not part of this research.
Good question, Hillary. Go ahead, Trent.
Thank you, and thanks for this presentation. I just had a question related to the communication page. I thought that was really interesting, and I also wondered if there were other communication vessels that weren't included on that, such as like optional, like opt-in text alerts or anything like that. If there was any sort of precedent for like a city using something like that, if so.
You know, we didn't include that, but that's a really good note for us, because it had crossed my mind before to see if that would be a useful tool. But no, we didn't ask survey members if that was something they'd be interested in. But as we go forward, when we do plan to continue surveying, because we want to continually measure, right? We always want to try to show that ROI. So that's something good that we can put out there in the future, Trent.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have a question? Becky, when will we see you again?
I was ready to come down to City Hall tonight, but Emily wouldn't let me.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you so much, everybody.
You're welcome. Okay, let's move on to our action items now. We have 4 action items. The first is acceptance of the May 6, 2020 Finance and Administration Committee meeting minutes. Audrey McClanahan, and for those in the public who don't know, Audrey is our new city clerk. She replaced Martha Sumrall, and we look forward to hearing from you, Audrey.
Thank you. Yes, I submitted the Finance and Committee meeting minutes from May 6th for your all's review. Thank you very much.
Can I get a recommendation on the minutes, please?
Yeah, accept.
All in favor?
Second.
Great. Okay, next we have the sale of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2020A, and that would be Brian Scott. Brian? Brian?
Okay, here we are.
There we go. Hi.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Last month, we brought you an opportunity to refinance some bonds that would result in approximately $600,000 of interest savings. The City Council gave us the authorization to proceed with coordinating a sale of that. So we've been diligently working on all the necessary documentation that goes into that sale. The sale will actually occur on the bids, excuse me, will occur on the 17th of June. And so we have tonight are the documents that represent the actual bid and the acceptance of the bid, and all of that occurring at your meeting on the 17th of June. The bid will occur at 10 in the morning, and then we'll announce publicly the successful bidder, and then we will present that to you all at the meeting on the 17th for your approval. And then if that's acceptable to you, we will move towards the actual sale of the bonds on July 9th, I believe. We've been busy this week, not only with the bond documents, but actually preparing a preliminary official statement that Laura and I reviewed this afternoon with Ellers, Bruce Kimmel, our financial advisor. And then tomorrow we have a call with S&P rating agency to discuss our rating for this particular bond issue. So
excellent.
Kevin Wimpy with Gilmore and Bell, who prepared all the documents that are in the packet tonight, is with us this evening if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Really riveting stuff, isn't it?
Well, you know something, I'm just giving a heads up that we have the best staff ever with the budget cycle and all these things going on simultaneously, getting into the bond thing with Ellers, and we have Bruce Kimmel, who's such a constant for us. Kudos to staff for keeping us going like this. I think you're doing a great job.
Oh,
Thanks,
you.
Brian.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna be really happy about that $603,000 savings right now. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that money is going to go a long way right now. So that's great work.
Yeah, we'll spend it quickly, I'm sure.
Okay, no further questions. Could I get a recommendation on the sale of GEO bonds?
Does this go on non-consent?
It would actually be on the front of your agenda. So there's that section at the very top of your agenda that says issuance of bonds.
Right.
That's where we're going to do it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great.
Move forward.
Okay, we'll move that forward. Next, we have the ordinance regarding vehicle tows by Chief Hadley. Hey, Chief.
Good evening. I am here. I apologize for everybody for not having my picture up here, but when I open this for the video, it literally shows up on every monitor that's down here. And I think one of me is enough. So We did want to bring before you some revisions to our tow ordinance that will make us compliant with the state law. And we were approached a couple months ago by an attorney for a few of the tow companies here in Johnson County that wanted to get with us about private property tows, me and David Martin, the city attorney. We reviewed that, made some changes in our ordinance to make us compliant with the state law, and also added in a few other things to protect the city and the residents here that could possibly, or visitors, have their vehicles towed. This actually makes it so that people can get into their vehicle if it's towed for 48 hours after it's towed off of private property to get essentials, medications, personal items, and things like that. We also have made it so that you can be 5 miles from the city of Mission, but it's not just here in Johnson County. It could be up in Wyandotte County because several tow companies have been asking if they can tow, and it did not meet our city ordinance. So it will give us more options for tow companies to use. And there's wording in the new city ordinance that we wanted to get put in there. If there's a private property tow that's done, the leasee or the property owner is the ones that has to contact the police department to give us all the information on where the person's car got towed, what tow company, all the vehicle information. So if somebody calls and wants to report their vehicle stolen, we can help them find where their car went. But the main reason for this was an attorney contacting us and us talking about the state law and then adding this stuff in to protect the city and the people that would that live here or visit here that have their vehicle towed by private property. So I'd ask for you to pass these ordinances that David Martin has written up, and I appreciate his staff doing everything they did to get this done. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thanks, Chief. Does anybody have questions?
Recommend consent.
Sounds good. Is everybody okay with that? Seeing head shakes. Okay, I think that's
Thank you.
it. Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Our last action item is on voter engagement strategy resolution, and Laura will be doing that presentation, please.
Yes, thank you. So at our May committee meeting, Councilmember Woltinghouse had shared some information that he collected at the National League of Cities conference about voter engagement strategies and ways to potentially increase voter turnout and voter engagement throughout the processes. So we had a discussion about what that might look like, and the council directed us to go ahead and prepare a resolution for consideration at tonight's committee meeting that would very generically, as you'll see that the resolution does, set out some goals and would allow us to then be creative to communicate up front that we certainly had a goal as a city and as a community of increasing voter engagement, but then we could exercise some creativity throughout the course of this year and the future and how we might do that and be most effective in doing that. And so just put a very simple resolution together and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's great. Anytime we're looking at voter turnout and being more effective and efficient, I think that's a great way to do it. So does anybody have questions for Laura?
I just want to say thanks to Trent for stepping up and bringing us some of the information from NLC also.
Absolutely. Thanks, Trent.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Maybe go with Solly first, and then I'll talk a little bit more about this after.
Go ahead, Solly.
Yeah, I just had one quick note on a sort of time-sensitive piece. I echo the thanks to Trent for bringing this to us, and I think it's really good to get council behind this. My recommendation was that one of our first actions in support of this resolution be to implement the PR campaign we had discussed around getting people to return their mail ballot applications, because I think everyone should have received those last week from the county. That's all I had. So Trent.
Thanks, Trent.
Cool. And so you'll notice that bullet point number 3 is, in the resolution, that section 3 is sort of the fun ways to infuse creativity. just a little tease. I had a good conversation with the mayor and also with Michael Popa of the Mainstream Coalition. And so I'm exploring inviting him to come and speak to us at our July committee meeting to show off kind of a cool, easy to use tool that allows you to kind of follow up with some people who may not be frequent voters, and it gives you like an easy way to kind of see if they have voted. Reminders. It's entirely nonpartisan. It's not. We're never talking about who they're voting for. We're strictly just kind of having an easy tool, and there's like a game system you can kind of do with different people to see who, you know, how many contacts have you talked to and stuff like that. So more to come on that, and I kind of, you know, wanted to get more ducks in a row on that before we presented that. So, and I've also been talking with Celia about it just on the chair. So we'll have some more information on whether we want to consider doing that next month.
Excellent. I know it's really not in the role of the city, especially City of Mission, since Shawnee Mission North is in Overland Park, but I think it's also important at some point that we have some dialogue maybe with seniors who are turning 18 and what their voting prerogatives are and just how the process actually works. So maybe somebody from the county do that, or Overland Park even, but I think it's great to keep young people on board, and voting is such a great process that they need to be involved in if possible. Yeah. Thanks, Trent.
I might just add, there is the Cities Vote initiative through the National League of Cities. I didn't want to go out and click the box and say Mission is participating until we had this conversation where we get through adoption of that resolution. But part of that involves developing and submitting to the National League of Cities kind of your 3-step action plan. And from what I can tell, once I hit the yes, we want to participate, I'll probably have access to a whole variety of other cities who've signed on, their action plans and their ideas. So I think it's always great to steal, you know, good ideas from other communities. But I do know that just in looking at materials and kind of preparing this resolution and thinking about this idea that target audience of young, you know, 17, 18-year-olds is certainly something that many cities and many communities are working on. So good. There are some great opportunities there.
Excellent. So what would be our next step on this?
This resolution would be on your agenda on the 17th of June. And so if you adopt that, then we're just kind of off and running. We did include some information. You know, we talked about last month as well about doing some evergreen pieces in any of our communication pieces. And we did include some information in this most recent issue of the Mission magazine.
I saw that.
On that process. And so it was short and sweet because we were right up against a deadline about the time we talked about it, but certainly that's a great tool for us to be able to just, you know, incorporate and develop that evergreen material and keep it out in front of people and, you know, change the message. We talked about kind of moving it around enough so that it doesn't become something that people just gloss over like they do our, you know, who are your council members and what time are our council meetings directory in the magazine. So,
okay, sounds good. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Trent or Laura?
No, happy birthday, Trent.
Oh, today's your birthday.
Yeah.
You don't want us to
a couple
say
days ago.
It was a couple of days ago, but this, thank you. Thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would maybe recommend this one, Debbie, for non-consent, so that we could have another reminder about the ballots, and then maybe also discuss a little further if we want Laura to go ahead and click yes on that city's vote initiative.
Sure. That's great. Great idea. And maybe Trent maybe weigh in at the council meeting about, you know, how he came up with this and how we're going to work with the National League of Cities, and that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to move into discussion items. We have none. All we have left is department updates from Laura. Laura?
She's muted.
She's muted.
I'm sorry, I don't think we have anything else to share this evening. One of these days I'll get the hang of it. About the time we come back in person, I'll figure this Zoom thing out.
Do we have an anticipated update as to when we will be going back into open forum?
Well, tentatively, as we discuss it and track it, tentatively we've said no in-person meetings before July 1st. So we actually, our next committee meeting date would be on July 1st. So we will kind of watch data and stay in touch, obviously. We have we'll have our June 17th City Council meeting via Zoom. And then we also have a budget work session scheduled for June 24th, which we would anticipate doing virtually. And you know, we can certainly have a conversation at that point about whether we think we're ready to transition back to an in-person meeting.
Sure. Okay, I think that's about it. I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
Well, congratulations on the new leaders of these committees. Thank you very much. It was a very productive 2 meetings, so I will move to adjourn.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll see you all later. Have a
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.